So y'all do
Well, we're going to start without it. All right, thank you. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the November 15th, 2022 meeting of the Orangetown Plan and Zoning Commission. I am Commissioner Ozzie Parenti. I'll ask those seated at the table to introduce themselves, please.
Tammy Trantalis, Administrative Assistant.
Tom Tarenti.
Kevin Cornell.
Judy Smith.
Jack Demerjen, Zoning Administrator.
And we have also with us Town Attorney Vin Marino. All right, let's see. Let me start with, we're flip-flopping two items on our agenda tonight. Item 5, which is the Southern Connecticut Wellness and Healing item, will now be 6, and the self-storage facilities will be 5. So we'll do the self-storage facilities application first, and then the Southern Connecticut Wellness. All right, first item on our agenda is a review of the minutes from the November 1, 2022 meeting. They were in our packages. Everybody have a chance to take a look?
I don't have anything else. I have nothing.
At the bottom of page 3, there's a sentence fragment that I think you meant to delete, if you could take that out.
Yes, I will delete that.
I had just a couple of things, Tammy.
Okay.
On page 2, the third full paragraph from the bottom. Chairman Parenti asked for a reference to Marshall Road on the plan. I don't think it should say on the plan. I think it should say in the proposed regulations.
Okay.
And same on the next line, agreed to add it to the plan should be taken out, replaced with in the proposed regulations.
Okay.
On the top of page 3, there's the second line. Chairman Parenti decided to keep the public hearing open. Chairman Parenti in the commission agreed.
Okay.
The commission agreed to keep it open. And the only other thing I had was on the, let's see, it's a middle of the page, the paragraph begins, Commissioner Kaplan asked. Now, if you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, the line begins, the presence of 2 bathrooms could be contemplated as a dwelling. Our concern was that they could indicate or allow use as a dwelling. So I would just change that. Or suggest use, you know.
And in the following paragraph, Mr. Zecco demonstrated on the plan where the existing septic system was located.
Okay.
It was important that the barn was served by an existing septic system.
Right. Okay. Got it.
All right. I think that covers it. Tom, unless you all set?
I'm all set. Yeah.
All right, then, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Abstain. I was not here.
Okay, right. So, 3 aye and 1 abstention. All right, next item on the agenda is old business and commissioner training requirements. Here we go. How you doing, Paul? Other than you couldn't find a place to park?
Yeah.
All right, under old business, anybody want to bring up anything under that topic?
For the commissioner training, I sat down with Vin and We had thought that perhaps the best way to go about it is once a quarter, so you have an hour of training here per quarter, where we can get all of our land use boards together and have someone come down to us. One day it'll be an affordable housing expert, the next an FOI expert. Right, that's kind of what we were thinking,
That
so.
would be great.
We have a tentative schedule for it. I haven't filed it with the town clerk yet. I will distribute it to this board as well as the ZBA, make sure they don't have any issues with it, but it seems like an easier way to kind of get things done. So if everybody is in favor of that, then I can kind of get that rolling.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Sure.
Yeah.
And of course, if you, we have to submit this to the Board of Selectmen by March. So there is actually an extra few months that you will have if for some reason you weren't able to make one of these meetings. There's multiple online seminars that you'd be able to do. So this is not, if you're not here, you're not getting your 4 hours. So just so everyone is aware of that.
All right, good. Anything else under old business? Okay. Kevin?
No.
All right. Next item on the agenda is item number 3, new business. Do we have anything to discuss?
Yeah, I have, I know it's going to be busy tonight, but I have 2 things I wanted to get started. Item 1 is that when the cannabis regulation was adopted by the board, the state regulation limited a town of 25,000 people to 1 use. So we were looking at one thing occurring. That has gone away. And now, with that regulation in place, the only thing limiting the number available by special use permit is the 5,000 square foot distance separation. We have just under 3 miles, point to point, Milford to West Haven on the C1 commercial district. And what I'd like to do is propose that we amend the distance regulation from the existing 5,000 square feet, which is a little shy of a mile,
Linear feet.
Linear.
feet, what I,
Linear feet. Yeah.
linear
square
feet, to 15,000 lineal feet. Because I didn't want to deal with the first one, I don't want to deal with 3. Now, I don't know that if you're making a text more restrictive, if we need to notice it and go through that whole legislative process or what it is.
Do
So,
for any text change.
any text change. Okay. So,
That would effectively limit the amount of these establishments to what the legislature had initially proposed.
Right.
well, it would, unless that would assume that the one on Lindy gets approved. Then the distances would work. If for some reason that didn't happen, I guess technically you could have one on the border of West Haven, one on the border of Milford, but effectively, yes.
But your point is well taken. I mean, you only want to allow 1 in the town, period. So however,
And we can't just say that?
yeah, we could just say that. I mean, I don't know what the best way to amend the regulations would be, but we could certainly consider that.
Well, I would like to do it with some expedition, with some speed, because, as soon as somebody gets a license, we're gonna be looking at this. So I don't wanna,
Well, I agree with you, and I think we should put that on our agenda as soon as possible. Notice the public hearing,
Okay.
and let's get that done. I don't know.
And I think we should run it by Vin first to see whether or not it's going to be linear feet, or we can just state the number.
Right. Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, I don't know what I haven't thought it through, what the best way to do it is in terms of the regulations, but I understand your point,
okay.
and I agree.
All right, then the second one, it'll be a little quicker.
I think
Sorry.
that was probably in our collective minds. We had the protection of the state law that said only 1.
That's
in
right.
town order, and we were
Based upon our
comfortable with that.
population. Right.
Yeah, well,
And
situations
then they
have
dropped
changed.
that out.
And now we're not.
Right.
All right.
Right. The second thing is, this came up in the context of the accessory structure, another large accessory structure that we approved on Grassy Hill. And I would like to suggest that we add text into the flexibility that we're given of allowing larger accessory structures to include language that prohibits those accessory structures approved under that section from being connected to a new or existing sanitary system. Because I don't want to make them into de facto second homes.
Yeah.
So prohibiting accessory structures from,
Prohibiting the accessory structures that are approved under that section from being connected to a new or existing
Or
sanitary
existing, do we have the
system.
ability to? if
Why
it's a-
not? They're asking for something new.
Well,
So-
the one that we did last week, though, that one was already approved by the town, right?
Back before there were regulations.
Right, that's what the problem was.
we don't have the authority, and of course Vin can chime in if he wants, but we don't have the authority to make a pre-existing non-conforming use no longer
Right,
allowed. We don't get to retroactively revoke that.
Right.
So if something is already in existence, we could prohibit the installation of a septic system for an accessory structure.
Right.
But if one exists now and is non-conforming,
Yeah,
we
but-
don't,
But what Kevin's saying is, we don't have to enlarge, agree to enlarge a building or, a larger, or, pursuant to that section of the regulations, allow an accessory building to be larger if it's served by a septic system or city sewers or.
Right,
Either
well,
one.
that's
Either
why I
one.
used the word, sanitary,
yeah.
They're coming to us for some relief. We can refuse to give that relief if,
they don't want to give us what we want.
right. And last week's was, weren't extending the structure, they were making it pretty on the outside, if I remember correctly.
They were-
It was
minor,
it was a
minor.
deck addition.
They were doing a
raised deck.
minor
Deck addition.
stair
Yeah.
tower because Barnes didn't have reasonable access
Right.
for people walking. But
All right.
that one doesn't have a time.
all right, anything else under new business? All right. Report of the zoning enforcement officer?
Nope, I don't have anything tonight.
All right, you getting your training done?
Yeah, we did that last week, so still waiting to hear from them and see where it goes.
Good. All right, is Attorney, I don't see Attorney Nuff.
Nope.
Oh, okay. All right, so as I said, we're going to switch items 5 and 6. We'll proceed with our public hearings now. Item 6 is a petition to amend the Orange zoning regulations, Article 8, Section 383-66, submitted by the Montar Group to allow self-storage facilities in the Light Industrial 2 District. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Amy Suchin, Hurwitz, Sagarin, Salzberg, and Nuff, here in lieu of Attorney Nuff tonight,
All right,
who
good.
had a conflict representing Montar Group. So let me just take a moment and hand out some materials. I understand these were submitted to you electronically, but I just wanted to get the copies before we discuss. I'm trying to separate them out.
There you go. Thank you. We need one more, or?
I think we should be okay.
All right. I think we have it.
Would you please repeat your name? She didn't pick that.
Yes, Amy Suchins, Souchuns. So again, Mr. Chairman, here on a continuation of the hearing last month, there were a couple of issues that were left open for discussion, and what we have before you were the modifications to Section 3 of the regulation, which included the revision to set a maximum building height of 55 feet, notwithstanding 38369, which sets that maximum at 60 feet. And then also to make it clear that the landscaping requirements that had been discussed at the last hearing and are incorporated into your site plan regulations also applied to the site. So both of those have been included, and I think that's intended to supersede the language about the architectural finishes and concrete block walls, given that those requirements in 383-17E5 are certainly much more comprehensive. And then the other issue was that we had also provided a copy of the preliminary site plan with some views from Interstate 95. The question was whether there was any kind of visibility of the building. As you'll see, it's the last 2 pages. As you'll see from Interstate 95, the building is hidden behind, number one, the Homewood Suites, and then also that was southbound, and then from northbound, the berm directly adjacent to the highway screens any view from the northbound travel lanes as well. So those were the outstanding issues. Dan Moore from Montar is here tonight. If there are any other questions, happy to answer them for you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I don't know if this is more appropriate during the public hearing or the discussion on the text change, but since in analyzing the language, the area that would be open to development of the self-storage use is basically will be any land that's accessed by Salemi Drive. So in considering this and how you feel about self-storage, we should understand that if Salemi Drive, if DiCello, extends Salemi Drive and cuts out a bunch of 2-acre parcels, because this is successful, we could have a little farm of self-storage here, as well as on the south side of Salemi Drive, it looks like there's a couple of smaller parcels that are currently vacant that might also be done. So,
Well, if they extend something like, then that's gonna almost void the text,
well, it's not.
because it's saying on a dead-end street.
Yeah, but if they extend it, but keep it as a dead end,
Oh.
it's just gonna be a longer lollipop.
Right. Well, my concern, I actually was looking at the opposite end of Salemi Lane. You have some pretty dilapidated houses there. You could turn it into self-storage row.
Right, exactly.
That's
That's what I'm
what he's
saying.
Theoretically, you're saying it on the other side, but, right,
Right.
same thing.
So, we always have to be aware that when we're dealing with text for a zone, we're not dealing with just a site. So,
Didn't we talk about honing in on that a little better by referring to Marsh Hill Road as well?
I think if you read the text,
Oh, I think you're right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I wondered if, when we talked about it the last time, we said, the intersection of the highway and Marsh Hill Road, because that's where
right, and then they measure a discrete distance of 600 feet.
yeah, within 600 feet of a non-access highway line.
Right,
But if you also said within X feet of Marsh Hill Road, Would that solve the problem you're asking about?
Well, then you would be dealing with the parcels on the south side of Salemi Lane, which are closer to Marshall Road than the subject parcel.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I'm sure the applicant is interested only in identifying a single parcel here.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, no.
The applicant is only one of our considerations.
Right.
When we do a text amendment, we have to look at it townwide and the
No, I
impacts
understand.
everywhere.
But you could write the language in such a way that it identifies as one particular parcel. So that it could only, you can only have self-storage on that parcel, no other one in the rest of the town. If you were inclined.
Right. And C1 does not authorize at this point self-storage either, even though U-Haul is, we talked about this last, pre-existing.
Right. Self-storage, I believe, is prohibited in every other district in town.
Correct.
Well, could you simply stipulate that you have one self-storage facility in the LI2 zone? Or is that too restrictive?
That,
Spot zoning, I think we have a problem. Yeah.
Can't do
Why?
that.
Yeah, I mean,
Took a shot.
One dispensary,
Yeah.
one
right.
self-storage.
It's pretty
Still have a place to put the money.
Will be a unique town.
All I'm saying is I think it can be done. If we were inclined to go along with the idea, it can
Right.
be done in such a way that it would be limited to this particular parcel.
and I'm just dealing with what's in front of us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What percentage of the lot is covered with your drawing? Coverage
The,
proposal?
we're only at the text amendment, so we haven't fully engineered the site plan. Do you have?
40% is
Yeah.
allowed.
Right.
Even better.
Dan Moore with Montar Group. Currently, we're right at 36%. I believe the LI2 allows 40% on their building coverage.
So then, the other thing in looking at the text that struck me is when the zone was written, in order to, I guess, encourage campus-type development of office space, there was 80% FAR floor to area ratio associated with the lots. And
Yeah.
I don't see anywhere else for any other particular use that we're asking, we have a bonus here of 140%.
Yeah.
And, just in general, as a starting point, I look at giving bonuses for things I really strongly want. I mean, just, it's like, what's in it for Orange? While clearly a self-storage building does not generate a lot of wear and tear on the town infrastructure in terms of police, probably fire, school systems, things like that.
Traffic.
It's not going to generate the tax revenues of some other uses, because, say, in an office building, I think you also are taxing the personal property inside the building,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? And you wouldn't do that on a self-storage, because it'd be a moving,
Right.
Yeah.
It's not there.
Contents are
Very
not
little
taxable
Contents are not
property
there.
tax. Yeah.
So I don't know how that plays into other people's feelings about, whether this is something we want to do or not do.
I mean, my guess is that unless you have that kind of density, it probably isn't economically viable for the applicant. So if you're not willing to go along with that concession,
Right.
then you don't want self-storage, which is okay. I'm just,
Right.
but I think if you,
I would agree with that.
if we say it's got to be 80%, then I don't want to speak for the applicant, but the answer then is, well, this is not the right place for us. You know, what I mean? We can't make
Yeah.
money that way.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. On the substantive, and then there's also simply just, as you get to a smaller lot, in order to make that feasible, just on sheer numbers, if you have 8 acres, you can have a smaller amount of coverage because you have additional land. So as you get into smaller and smaller lots, that's where I think the component of, and I agree, if you disagree with us that this is a use that you want to see in town, but I think when you start looking at the smaller parcels and how they can be developed, with less land, there are obviously constraints. And so I think that really ties into the 140% because you have less area.
And I actually find Attorney Nuff's analysis of as the LI2 zone gets more and more developed, you wind up with dealing with the leftovers or the problem children or whatever you want to say, the smaller little lots are going to be that are more challenging to fit into the format of the rest of the zone.
Unless you assemble some of those lots.
However, when the zone was written, the minimum lot size is 2 acres. Now, I wasn't here when it was written, so maybe they were just taking into account that there were a lot of existing 2-acre lots, but.
Judy, were we here? I don't think it was prior to us too, right?
Predates us, right.
All right.
I mean,
So those were the two things that, jumped out at me. But again, I guess that this is more discussion.
yeah, I think as these lots get smaller, the permitted use in the LI2, the permitted uses may not, as the applicant points out, may not be that easy to develop those parcels with permitted uses. So I would expect we'd see, more applications to amend the regulations. I mean, like, that's why the hotels are there, right?
No, the hotels were permitted use.
By special use, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't,
more like-
that wasn't always the case.
Oh, well, but they
Those
would
are
be,
two,
it would be a normal ancillary use to an office or park or an industrial park like that, but on an interchange. And this commission.
but it's still not, at one point in time, it was neither a
Yeah,
permitted use or a use permitted by special exception.
right. And the commission recently approved the EV service station.
Travel center.
Yeah.
Travel center, yeah.
We also, at one time, I recall, I'm not gonna be able to put my hands on it now, but something about recreational facilities. Indoor recreational facility,
D.
D. Thank you.
I have, that was added in 2006.
Yeah, so we were, seems like yesterday, Paul.
I would agree with that. 2006 seems really.
But we were here when that was done. Bet you we can't explain why we did it now.
Yeah, well, who was the user? I can't remember.
Yeah. All right, do we have any further questions? The applicant want to have
Yeah,
anything
I
further?
think it just to sort of, again, come back to that notion of what happens with smaller lots. I mean, I think one idea of allowing additional coverage also maintains, you have setback requirements. You ensure that there's appropriate spacing between uses and things like that. Again, as you get to smaller lots, there are ways that you could address that. And so I think what we've done in the text amendment is address it through additional coverage, but maintain the setbacks and things like that that would be, I think, potentially more impactful to surrounding uses or how the area starts to feel. But I guess the final question about, subsection 1, the south side of Salemi Lane is more than 600 feet from the non-access highway line, so I think that addresses part of the concern. But if there is, any other discussion you want to have with respect to, further narrowing section 1, I'm happy to have that discussion. It just becomes a little bit more challenging to do that once you close the public hearing because I can't weigh in. So if there's anything else there.
And I wasn't out there with a wheel measuring it, but so you're saying that if I measure from the right-of-way line of the road that accesses northbound on, because that would be part of the system, and measure 600 feet, I wind up on the north side of Salemi Lane? It's not Salemi Lane per se? Isn't it the access?
That's correct. It was specifically written to address exactly your concern about, to try to narrow it down to as tight as we could.
So then it would only be anything attached to, if the cello carved out some pieces. East of the lot. Oh,
I mean,
or
it
then
could-
would the 600-foot circle work?
Right, but it could be a 500-foot circle, right?
Yeah.
I'd have to measure it, make sure, but I believe that'd right. That'd work.
I mean, it's hard to do, again, they need 3 votes in favor of self-storage. I mean, are we interested in that use in this neighborhood? If not, then there's nothing further to talk about. If we are, then that language can be modified to take care of the concern you're raising, I would think, right?
Right. We're certainly receptive to further revisions to address that, which is why I raised it, so we could have the discussion if there was anything else.
Right.
No, I mean, listen, I appreciate creativity. It doesn't mean I will necessarily agree with it, but it's stimulating thought on some properties that should be added, that could be added to the tax base. And, but
I think in the application, the applicant makes a good point that, and this sort of ties in with our plan of conservation and development, where we're trying to, facilitate older folks in the town moving into smaller homes,
we want the older folks to move into the self-storage?
No, whatever. Isn't
that what he meant?
Oh, that's not
That's not what I meant,
Okay.
but they might not have the room to store all their things. And the self-storage building serves a useful purpose. So it does promote, in a way, that, creating other options for folks who've lived in Orange all their lives and are now trying to move into a house that's a little smaller. That's in your application. I didn't just dream that, right?
No, you didn't dream it. And the one thing I will add is that it also, given the fact that there are this property and others in the area that have residences on them, they're non-conforming. So the application and the proposal would also, in addition to, starting to redevelop those, it does eliminate nonconformities, which is also a goal that you have as a commission. So I think that's the other component to that.
Okay. All right. Then if you have nothing further to,
I have nothing further.
we can ask for comment from the public. Do we have any? Nobody's here on the self-storage? Okay. All right.
Just one comment.
If
you are,
you're gonna come, you have to come up to the podium if you're gonna comment so that we can record your comments.
It's a sort of on the lighter side. When we talk about.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, Jeff Klauke, I live at 30 Lakeside Drive.
Could you spell your last name?
Klaucke. As a senior citizen, I'm generally trying to downsize. So I had a larger house in Orange, was out of town and back. I'm in one of the condominium units. I'm trying to give away and move away from self-storage units. So it's not actually something I think most senior citizens are actually interested in,
Okay.
in my opinion. It's something you're trying to move away from. You got kids, you got other places, you don't want to care for it. Or you're on a fixed budget and you're thinking about, why do I need a storage unit?
Right. Okay.
Just a comment.
All right, it's helpful. Thank you. All right, well, I guess we sort of need a straw poll at this point. I mean, do we want to, sort of understand where we are in terms of the... Well, if we close the public hearing, then we can't amend...
We can't tighten up.
We can't change the language.
Section 1.
So that's sort of the problem.
We have to be confident that,
I know you didn't go from a unit facility, but can we add language to make it a minimum distance from Marsh Hill Road?
We can do whatever we want until we close the
mean-
public hearing, with the applicants, if the applicant
that-
goes along with it.
That seems like a reasonable way to handle it.
Yeah,
I mean, it would circumvent filling up Salemi Lane with
that's why I
self-storage
mentioned,
units.
Marsh Hill Road in the last
Well,
meeting.
I think
I don't-
you were referring to it as it relates to proximity to 95. Or-
Well,
or
the
you-
intersection of 95 and Marsh Hill Road.
Right. But I'm saying the facility's got to be a minimum distance from Marsh Hill Road, whatever it is.
If that works.
1,000 feet, whatever it is.
If that works, I'm sure the applicant would be amenable to it. Question we have to answer first is whether we want a self-storage facility in the LI2 district in the town of Orange.
I mean, the LA2 district historically was coveted because that's where the big tax generation dollars were coming from. Not that the economics weighs into zoning. But the point is they haven't really been, this is a little area with tiny lots. We haven't had biotech, we haven't had light industrial. Is it a way to work a parcel, with a use? Yeah, so that's sort of what we have to decide.
Yeah. So what do you think?
I think 140% FAR is a bit excessive, but
Well, I mean, I don't imagine we can, again, we could ask the applicant. I don't know that we can tinker with that all that much before it becomes a project that the applicant's not interested in anymore. I don't know, whether that's 100, 110, 95, or what. I imagine all self-storage facilities like this do have that ultra level of lot density.
Yeah, there was, actually, it was an article in the paper today about one going up in Shelton, I think, adding on, and it had eerily similar sizes, 120,000 square feet, 4 stories. Seems to be like a sweet spot for the prototypical self-storage building.
Right.
So I'm personally lukewarm on it. I'm leaning no, but I'm not going to lose any sleep if they get 3 votes.
Paul?
I'm less lukewarm than him. We haven't had it in there. It's not allowable use. It is a way to get more tax billables. It's not something that I think is, it's not going to knock my eyes out. I'm a little concerned about Kevin's take on assemblages of lots once we open the door. I don't see the need for this at this point. The LI2 zone was not specifically, obviously not meant for self-storage, otherwise it would have been drafted in there. I don't know. I don't,
So you're a likely no.
at this point, yeah.
Tom?
Personally, I don't have a big problem with it.
Yeah.
If we can keep it away from Marsh Hill Road and it's not an eyesore. Because, I took a ride up there and I think you're gonna have at least a limited amount of visibility from 95, at least going northbound.
Right.
Yeah, you're just gonna catch it going up the ramp behind
Right.
behind the northbound off. As you're coming up and you're looking at the Hilton Garden, you'll just see it outlined in the back.
Exactly.
But that's the visual impact.
I don't know, I think I can live with it, it's not, corporate headquarters, it's not, a menu, it's not, a factory, a modern factory or other, there are, it's not a, but, we've, a lot of these permitted uses in the LI2, we can be waiting for quite some time before we get one of those, And we have shown a willingness to some extent anyway to amend the regulations to allow for, uses that you wouldn't consider to be traditionally light industrial. The hotels, for example, a recreational facility. So to me, it revives a very underutilized parcel or two in that neighborhood, and I don't see a big problem with it. Visually, that doesn't bother me that you would get a glimpse of it driving by on 95, So I would probably go along with it. But I would want some change to that language in the first section to, hone in on a particular parcel.
So keep the public hearing open.
So we keep the public hearing open, but I don't want to waste the applicant's time. I guess that's what I'm getting to, so if it's not, if there aren't 3 votes,
Well, we don't know, because we haven't deliberated, so.
yeah. Well, we're sort of deliberating now, but that's okay. I mean, you see where we are.
Yeah, no, and I
You wanna
think there are a
keep the
couple,
public-
I was gonna say, so there are a couple points that I think I could just address quickly, and if the commission's preference is to continue deliberating and, or not deliberating, but continue the discussion with the hearing open, obviously, we're amenable. But I think with respect to, the discussion about the visual impact, I think this is also something, I know this came up at the last hearing, but you're not opening up the entire town to self-storage in locations where you don't want it. I think this was intended to be a targeted location where it's, not high visibility, doesn't have, might not be in a location where you might attract a different use. I think if you were down in other parts of town, I could see that being a consideration, but this is obviously the industrial zone and has the benefit of sort of less visibility from a prominent standpoint, not an actual, but also the visual aspect. I think to the extent that there is the opportunity for the, assembly of lots, again, I think it's, somewhat limited. Inherent in any kind of assemblage of lots is you need each of the property owners involved to commit to that transaction. And so assemblage of lots starts to certainly become a little bit more challenging
Well,
rather than
It's even more
something
restricted, given that you've honed in on the location.
Correct.
So-
Exactly. And that reminds me that to the extent that, and I'll sort of close with the comment about the location, is that if you were to approve this with the narrowly tailored location, anybody else who wants to put in self-storage need to come back to you with another text amendment to say, I want to go here. And you're going to have, again, your legislative capacity, your legislative hats on to think about where you want to see this, whether you want to see it expanded. And so I think that's we're not asking for this on, just a zoning permit or even site plan approval. Somebody coming back trying to expand this would in fact require another text amendment. So I think what I would say with respect to I sub 1 is that once we add in a distance for Marsh Hill, probably just for the sake of clarity, I would say something to the effect of located on a dead-end street within 600 feet of a non-access highway line or access ramp, B, within 500 feet of Marsh Hill Road, and C, a maximum of 3 acres. So you have each of those 3 components very clearly delineated, so that way there's no question about, where's the and, where's the comma, where's the or, and you would meet each of those 3 criteria. Based on our estimate, we're somewhere between 400 and 500 feet from Marsh Hill Road. So given that, we think 500 would be a distance that we're comfortable with because we know we would meet that.
And the 140% maximum floor area is only applicable with respect to self-storage facilities. It doesn't apply with respect to anything else
Correct.
in the LI2 district.
Right.
All right then, okay.
So
We'll-
I'm happy to do whatever the preference. If the commission, I know Commissioner Smith, you weren't here at the last meeting, I think. So if the preference of the commission is to keep the hearing open, we can obviously, we do that. I didn't check the calendar to see
Yeah,
if
we
we
need
need
to-
to consent to you.
I think we only opened it at the last meeting.
Okay, so
So
we're okay.
Set?
Yeah,
November
so we're good
1st.
until,
Right.
for the December 6th meeting. If we weren't to close it there, then we would have to get into some extensions.
All right,
Okay.
so we don't need an extension.
Not at the moment.
All right, so let's keep the public hearing open, and we'll revisit in
Would you like me to
December
sub-
6th.
Right, would you like me to actually modify that
Yes.
section 1 and I'll resubmit that to the commission so you
Just so-
have it in front of you?
Just so we are clear, it was opened on the 1st of this month. The 6th would be the 35th day. So which is our limit to have it open.
All right, we should
We'd
have
have
an
to close
extension.
So if we would rather have an extension now, we could discuss that. We would fit within the 35 days, but just want to make sure everyone is aware that would be the 35th day.
All right, can the applicant agree to extend to the second meeting in December?
Only one meeting
Oh, there's
in
only one
December.
meeting, that's right.
I'm
Well,
happy-
no, it's the
if-
extension we're looking for. I mean,
right, if
I think
the-
we're gonna decide this one way or another
At that meeting.
At the next
Right.
meeting.
I mean, we're fairly certain we're gonna close the public hearing on the 6th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not looking for anything else from any department head.
Sorry, not
That's
from a
okay.
department, head, but if your client would have access to some geometry from the measuring point that we're trying to use to the 4 corners of your property, so that if you have access to that, that would be very helpful to us.
Would you agree to a 7 or 10-day extension of the time to close the public hearing?
Yes, I'm sorry, we
I'm
were
sorry, I
also
didn't mean
talking,
to-
I missed the actual, where we run out of time.
That day.
That day.
The day of the
Right.
meeting is the 35th day.
Okay,
So
that's what I
just
thought.
to give us a little comfortability and a few days to, I think everyone's planning on closing it at that meeting anyways, but just so we aren't pressed up.
Understand, so
Right.
yeah, if we need to do 10 days, that's fine, and if we get closer, if we need to discuss that, we can do that.
Right, okay. All right.
Thank you.
We all set?
We are all set.
All right.
Thank
very
you,
good.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. The final item on our agenda is, relates to the application for special permit submitted by Southern Connecticut Wellness and Healing. Here's what I planned for tonight. We're still waiting on on our independent traffic study. So, Jack, what's any update on that?
He said sometime this week, but I
So-
didn't get an exact day.
So we're not really prepared or interested in discussing anything substantive tonight with respect to the application, because we're waiting on the traffic study. So when we get our independent traffic study sometime this week, we'll have a chance to study it, and we'll reconvene on December 6th, and we'll review the traffic study and go over any other open matters that need discussion, and hopefully we'll be able to close the public hearing at that time and make a decision on the application. But there are a few housekeeping things to take care of tonight, one of which is there's been a petition filed by a resident seeking the recusal of our town attorney, alleging that he has a conflict of interest in the case. So we want to hear from him or her. I don't recall, I have it in my file, but we want to hear on that and get the town attorney's response and make a decision on whether we think there is a conflict or not. And then the other housekeeping matter we want to take care of tonight, there have been 3 petitions to intervene, or 3 petitions by residents seeking intervener status in the hearing, and we'll consider those applications and make a decision on whether to grant intervener status or not. So those are the only 2 pieces of business I intend that we take care of tonight. Anything substantive as to the application itself, the application for special use permit or site plan, that'll come hopefully on December 6th when we've had a chance to review our traffic study. All right. Any questions? All right. So first item is, there's a letter written by Jesse Parks, 12 Founders Way, requesting of the commission that we, that Vinnie Marino, the town attorney, recuse himself from consideration of representing the town, basically, representing the commission in connection with the application. So I'll ask, is Mr. Parks here tonight?
Yes, I am.
Are you prepared to address the commission with respect to your...
I am at this time.
Okay, good.
Jesse Parks, 12 Founders Way, Orange, Connecticut. At this time, I'd like to withdraw my request for recusal,
Okay,
and I have a statement for that to present to the committee.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Pass these around. Would you want to see this? All right. So Mr. Parks is indicating that he wishes to withdraw his petition. Any questions for Mr. Parks, or?
He raised issues. I think Vinnie's response was very comprehensive. I understand, and I accept the withdrawal.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah, I mean, I guess we don't need to get to the substance of it. If you're withdrawing it, then that's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anything you need to?
No, I think the withdrawal speaks for itself.
Very good, that was simple. All right, next item then,
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
just so the record is complete though, just so if my response should be part of the record since so
Yeah.
the record is complete.
I believe it is, right?
Yes.
It's been sent, yeah, okay.
I have it.
Thank you.
All right then.
Chairman Parenti, before we consider the individual intervener requests,
Yeah,
would it be, I think it would be helpful, I know it would be to myself, but also maybe the audience, for people to understand what an intervener is and what context it comes in under, the environmental regulations, just so.
that would be, that would be helpful. Our town attorney prepared to
Sure,
advise us on that?
sure.
Can you do that, Vinnie?
How can we do that? Good evening, Vince Marino, your town attorney. So there is a statute, it's 22A-19, that allows, let me actually turn to it. Sorry, I'm too organized, I can't find it.
Here you go, Vinnie, is this, you want it?
No,
Your-
it's here, it's just not tabbed properly. So, let me turn,
You want to,
oh, I shall find it, because I know it's in here. There it is, here it is. Got it right here. There it is. Okay, so 22A-19 provides that in any administrative proceeding of any political subdivision of the state, so in any town, any person may intervene as a party on the filing of a verified pleading asserting that the proceeding or action for review involves conduct which has or which reasonably likely to have the effect of unreasonably polluting, impairing, or destroying the public trust in the air, water, or other natural resources of the state. So that's what the statute provides. So the verified pleading must contain specific factual allegations setting forth the nature of the alleged unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction of the public trust in the air, water, or other natural resources and of the state, and should be sufficient to allow the reviewing authority, the commission, to determine from the pleading whether the intervener implicates an issue within the reviewing authority's jurisdiction. So the intervener is the person. So what has been submitted are, so 3 individuals have submitted documents. Those documents are called the pleadings. And in those pleadings, those individuals have asserted certain facts, asserting that the applicant's conduct in bringing this application is alleged to cause harm to the natural resources of the state in some way,
which includes the town of Orange.
which includes the town of Orange. And those individuals have now the burden of showing how this applicant's conduct in bringing this application is going to cause harm to the natural resources of the state of Connecticut, in the air, water, or other natural resources of the state. So it is their burden. Now, what they've asked this commission to do is to consider feasible alternatives. So saying that that there's, what the applicant is proposing is the commission should consider alternatives to what they're proposing. Before the commission can consider those alternatives, it is the burden of the intervener to put in evidence into the record. So again, this is a proceeding, and you know, it is the individual's obligation to demonstrate to the commission that the applicant is actually causing harm. Just because you say so doesn't mean it's so. The applicant is proposing to bring a business to town. Everyone has a right to be in favor of it or to be in opposition to it. But when you rise to speak in favor or in opposition, you should speak to the merits of this application, not in favor of an individual or in opposition to an individual. And I'm going to just stand here for a moment and just address what I watched when I watched the hearing from this application last meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, as your town attorney, this is a administrative proceeding. You all have a right to be heard. But when you rise to address this commission, you rise to address an application. You have every right to oppose this application, but you address the merits of the application. You do not oppose the commissioners that sit on this board. I was offended by what I heard. You should be ashamed, and those who spoke know who I'm speaking about.
All right.
Just, Mr. Chair, these people are your neighbors. They volunteer their time. You don't get paid.
All right.
And when you rise, if you have an objection, state your objection. You know, there are children in the room. Show them what civics is about. This is not about being a Republican or a Democrat. This is about why an application should be granted or denied. This is about why this should or should not this business fits in the town of Orange's commercial corridor. That's what it's about. You have a right to be heard, and this commission will give you that right. But anyone who takes this podium and attacks an individual will be ruled out of order. The meeting will stop, and you will be asked to leave. What I saw will not happen again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.
Sorry. So I had a slightly different question. During a normal administrative hearing on a site plan, we take information in from the public on the application, voicing various concerns. This appears to be different in that we're not addressing the mechanics of the site plan application use bulk. We're actually looking at this like an environmental impact statement.
So these are intervenor applications. These individuals, to be granted intervenor status, have to demonstrate what harm to the environment this applicant presents. And so the chair will afford these applicants the right to be heard. And he'll ask them what evidence they have and they'll be given the floor. And they can present whatever evidence they have. They can say anything that they want that goes to the merits of their petition. And but the word intervenor simply is what they are as a party.
If you're given that status, Vinnie, if we decide to give the applicants that status, what does that mean? What does that require?
Or what additional rights do they get?
What rights?
They're granted a party. That's their party status as an intervenor.
What do they get
They're,
in
they're,
that capacity?
they're standing. They're standing as a party.
So in other words, if they're entitled to any notices
Exactly.
that the applicant is entitled to.
Exactly.
All right.
They become a party to the proceeding. They become a party to the proceeding. If they're granted intervenor status, they become a party to the proceeding.
I mean, I understand the statute, state law, and I think it's basically, state law that gives any individual the right to, raise an environmental question with respect to any application. So these people seeking to intervene are saying that, this application, the application of Connecticut Wellness adversely affects the environment in some way.
But it has to be unique to the application under consideration.
Correct.
The impact has to be uniquely generated by that application
Yeah.
versus another commercial application.
Right.
Correct. And there's a distinction here between whether or not they have standing to be an intervenor and whether or not they can establish what the statute's going to require for the triggering of action by this commission.
But intervenor, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Either intervenor or non-intervenor, and just a member of the public, they have the right to appeal, no?
Of course. Of course.
I mean, I think, and I think what Vinnie's saying is that it's not sufficient to just make general allegations in your petition to intervene. You have to provide evidence. In other words, if you say, for example, that 6 cars queuing at the drive-through is going to adversely affect the air quality in a considerable way, in a significant way, then I would say, I would look at that and say, okay, whoever's presenting that needs to tell me he's an environmental scientist, or he has had to, confer with an environmental scientist to establish or provide evidence that that's the case. Otherwise, I mean, there are plenty of places throughout town where cars queue up routinely. Go to Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever. It doesn't mean that they unreasonably burden the environment. It just just because, you know?
Because this was a bank that had cars queued up.
Yeah.
And so,
So how, you know,
Well,
I guess
then
if you make that allegation in your petition to intervene,
but,
can you prove it in some way? Can you
But this
provide
is-
some
Why don't we
evidence?
let them take the podium?
but this is why we let them take the podium.
All right,
and-
well, let's do that. All right, let's do that.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to understand the context in which we were hearing what we would have heard if they came up while the hearing was open and listened to, versus now they want us to listen to them as a different type of person and rule on status.
Right, and again.
But they're basically saying, I mean, my review of these petitions, I mean, they're basically saying the same things.
Well, let's go one
Yeah,
at
well,
a
it's-
time. I'm just.
And again, you know, based on, and again, we can have this conversation after the fact when you're deliberating.
Yeah.
But, you know, you always want to err on the side of, since they're not members of the public, not represented by council, going to err on their side of granting them intervenor status, okay? Meaning that we want to be friendlier to them and you know, meaning lend the rules in their favor. Is that mine? I'll ignore that. But we want to understand also that they do have burdens that they have to sustain. Okay?
All right, so we have a petition to intervene from Mr. Parks. I hate to call you first, but it's just the first one in my file here. Do you want to come to the podium again and explain?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Explain your petition and give the commission a chance to ask you a couple questions?
Yes, I would. Some of this commentary,
You might-
again, Jesse Parks, 12 Founders
Very
Way.
good, thank you.
Some of this commentary I'd plan to address during the course of public comment on the item, which has been deferred to December 6th. So I will read into the record the letter that I forwarded to the committee.
The record's, it's already in the record, is it not? Yeah.
It is. So some of the points that were raised and which you brought up in the introduction, Chairman, included concerns about traffic and queuing at the drive-through section there. I was hoping that the information regarding the independent traffic study would be available, but I do think there is some compelling evidence otherwise that shows that there can be significant traffic generated at these type of facilities. And I would submit to the committee some information from ITE regarding trip generation information at these facilities, which states that these marijuana dispensaries drive 10 times more traffic than specialty retail stores. In previous meetings, the Green Thumb representatives have indicated that they service approximately 215 transactions per day at this point in time. Certainly, there's likely to be a significant increase in those numbers once recreational sales ensue at the site. They indicated that the average queue time was about 6 minutes. If these retail sales were indeed to increase, for example, 5 to 10 times, as some of these studies indicate they can, I think that would correspond to significant potential air pollution at the site due to idling vehicles at the area. So that was one of the items I wanted to address, and I can submit some of that information to the board if you like.
Okay.
And I have some additional copies that I can grab.
All right.
Additionally, as part of the proposal, there were indications that there would be changes to the parking area at the site, as well as the canopy and drive-through location. And I do have some concerns that these changes, in conjunction with increased traffic at the site, could present potential harm to the environment at the area, including the wetlands and the Trout Brook watercourse that runs through the back of the property and is likewise a boundary of my own property at the site, as well as my neighbors. Certainly, if that traffic was to increase to 1,000 vehicles a day, I think it would be reasonable to assert that there definitely would be some potential increase in discharge of oil and other substances into the wastewater system at the site, as well as non-point wastewater runoff if there's construction undertaken at the area There are a number of drains present at the facility, at the boundaries of it and the exit area, and also in the back that do seem to communicate with the water course in the area. And those are the concerns that I have.
Okay. Just refresh my memory, there was no inland wetlands.
There is the brook that is not on this property, but on the adjacent property.
Okay.
So there would be upland review area on this property. As the wetlands officer, I looked at the scope of work that was being proposed, and I determined that there would be no adverse effect to that.
Okay.
In that the impervious area and the upland review area was already existing?
Correct. They're not expanding impervious surface. The extent of it would be restriping, minor landscaping and planting, and the partial removal of that drive-through canopy. I was of the opinion that that would not have adverse effect on.
And that the existing stormwater management in place
Correct.
was sufficient.
Was sufficient.
But you didn't analyze pollution potential because that wasn't
Correct.
within your review.
Correct.
This, what Mr. Parks is talking about is not anything that you had the responsibility to look at.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, Mr. Parks?
Yes.
In your letter, you say non-point wastewater runoff, which would mean surface runoff from parking areas and/or the, the grassed areas or whatever. Could you elaborate on how the non-point might be affected?
Well, I think a potential concern if the canopy is removed or partially removed, which should have discharge at zero discharge, correct, from the canopy and the roof at the location. If that's removed, I think there could be additional non-point wastewater runoff at the facility onto the parking area.
Why would that be? What would the difference be between an impervious surface on the ground and a canopy roof?
Well, I believe the canopy roof would have discharge directed into the sewage system, correct? But it would not be an area that's potentially contaminated with, pollution from motor vehicles, including fuel oils, things like that.
Doc, who is Mike Spack?
I'm sorry?
I'm just looking at what you handed out. It's written by a guy named Mike Spack. I'm just curious.
So he's there. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to refer to with that document is that this is the ITE. Let me pull that up to refer to the.
International traffic.
Correct. And they publish standardized guidelines regarding traffic at various, businesses and retail venues. And as I said, I think there's some compelling evidence that there is a potential for a significant increase in traffic at the site, although the independent study hasn't been completed
Right.
At this time.
Yeah, we'll definitely learn more when we see that. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Parks? Okay. Judy?
All good, thank you.
All right, we're good, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Excuse me, Az.
Yeah.
Jack, while we're on the site, do we definitely have a proper sign-off from the fire marshal?
We do, yes.
Because I couldn't help but notice when I looked back at that site plan, that emergency vehicle access is actually shown coming out of Lindy Street towards the Post Road, which tells me you don't have access off the Post Road. You would have to come through, presumably through Hitchcock Plaza, to even get a fire truck onto that site.
No. I think that with the removal of the canopy behind the bank, the fire marshal would probably be templating coming down on the east side around into the back parking field if he had to
You
circulate.
can't get through there.
No?
How do you get through? You can't. Can you get through from Hitchcock Plaza? Was there
There,
access?
if you look on the site plan, they're actually showing the emergency vehicle coming out of Lindy Street towards the post road and taking a left into the parking lot,
There,
which tells me they're intending to route right through Hitchcock Plaza, which struck me as, I just wanted to be sure he reviewed that and he's okay with it.
Are we okay to call Jamie directly or no?
Yep.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, I have it right here. like
Okay.
9/7/22 was when he signed off.
Well,
But absolutely, we can.
well, the application is still open. And
Yeah.
as we said at the last meeting, when I asked Attorney Shansky that we would need some engineering assertion that the existing site plan functions up to our existing standards. You know, I would still expect that to be, you know, addressed.
But we have no prohibition of calling town officials.
No.
No, they advise us all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, the second petition to intervene was submitted by Mr. Glazer. Is he here?
Yes.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Yep.
for the-
James Glazer, 332 Lindy Street. I'm the first house on the, going down Lindy, I'm the first house on the left-hand side.
Okay.
I submitted the petition for intervener based on my property being the first one in on the left-hand side, as I suggested, due to the area being, if you go to this map that I pulled out, I'll pass it around to everybody. Orange 2015 Conservation and Development, Town and Planning and Zoning. Here's.
Here. Oh. I may have given you two there.
All right, one. If anybody needs one.
Okay.
And if you turn to page 2, Commissioner, if you look at the plan here, the property is right here, which indicates that that's wetland soil. And from the last meeting, when we were here, it was discussed that it didn't need to go through inland wetlands to be approved. When you do take down the canopy, you're going to disturb the asphalt that's there. You're going to have to pull the foundations out to get rid of that. You're going to have to pull up the and disturb the land by taking up one of the islands. So you are going to disturb the land that's there and ultimately open up that asphalt. It's not just adding parking lots to it. So from what I gather, you would probably need to go through inland wetlands in order to do that, since this piece of property is right here, pointed in green as inland wetlands. It also indicates, if you turn to page 3, you can see it blown up where it says Lindy Street, and it goes right through the piece of property. And if you keep on going through page 5, it actually goes through and says protecting water resources. It goes through what leaders should be going through all that. Conservation vegetation along streams and rivers, along conservation easements and other means. We're supposed to go through Inland Wasteland Commission, maintains upland review adjacent to wetlands and water courses in order to protect these resources, inland wetlands. And if you go to the next page, this is the trout brook that is on, that runs through, goes underneath Lindy Street and follows all the way down parallel to Mr. Park's property, parallel to the next intervener's property, and ultimately, you know, affects my property as well. And then you have the drains across the way that actually go to the Long Island Sound, which actually goes to the non-point runoff that goes to, that would go to the Long Island Sound. So as far as I'm concerned, this pollution would
But there are
Be
no
intervener.
wetlands on the property.
There is upland review area, no active water course or wetland on the property that we are aware of. There is, the stream is the only water course that would bring this into consideration. The stream is not on this property. There is upland review, but again, as the agent, I made the determination that there was not adverse impact based on the scope of work.
Okay. Okay, any questions for Mr. Glazer?
I would just like to ask the commission one other question.
Yep.
This traffic study that we're all waiting for, does that include the city bus stop that's going to be sitting right in front of Wayback Burger? The city, for pedestrian traffic coming to this
It certainly
facility?
should, yes.
Because the turnaround time on those items, I mean, my fear, and I'll voice it, I know is that people get off that bus and they say it's 6 minutes to make a transaction, and you got to wait for a bus for another 50 minutes. What happens to those people that want to get on the bus and go back to wherever they came from? They have to wait for it, and they got their product in their hand, and they're like a kid in a candy store, and they want to smoke it or do whatever they want with it. Where do they go?
All right.
And that's what I want to know, because you can't tell me that some people are not going to do, it's human nature.
All right.
I mean, so I'd like that to be part of the traffic study as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and the last petition to intervene was submitted by Mr. Cantillo here. Miss Cantillo, I'm sorry.
Good evening. ALA, D as in David, Y.
That's the first name.
A-L-A-D.
Yeah.
My last name is C-U-B-A-S.
C-U-B-A-S.
I'd like to introduce this material, and there is more copies for the rest of the group. And good evening. My name is Aladi Cubas. I live at 3117 Lindy Street, which is the property closest to the bank. My property has well water, and this brook trout water course that belongs to my property. I am concerned about the storm water runoff. As I wasn't able to attend to the previous meetings, but I understand that no storm water runoff management plan was presented, so that was one of my concerns. As you can see on the pictures that I presented, there is already contamination, littering coming from businesses that are on the plaza located across the street. I have already alerted zoning and planning and public works about it, but the contamination still is going on. I am concerned that bringing a retail business on that property 175 Boston Post Road, it will increase the littering, that I have to pay always somebody to clean from my property. And so I would like to know how the applicant is going to manage this. As the traffic will increase, the people walking by will increase. I would like to know how this is going to be handled. Further contamination to the Trout Brook water will also, I'm afraid it will also affect the quality of my private well. I went through the Orange town or the town of Orange storm water management plan, and which states that the applicant have to provide how the construction materials will be disposed and handled.
Those things are handled routinely when we approve a site plan as part of the construction.
The stormwater management?
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, not the stormwater management, but. Waste material. Yeah.
Waste material, right. And so I have not seen any of that, so I was concerned about it.
No, she, construction, yeah, during construction.
The debris,
Yeah.
that's what she's talking about.
Right,
Right,
yeah.
but what I'm saying, that's routinely, if the site plan were approved, yeah, I mean, it's, those measures are always implemented.
There are inspections by the building department on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
So I guess what I'm saying is, if the application were to be approved and the construction began, you wouldn't have to worry, theoretically, you wouldn't have to worry about those things because the town oversees it.
Okay. So I understand that the town also have to address the littering problem that is on Lindy Street, and it has not been done. And so it's something that I would like to bring up and for the commission to consider. Aside from that, it's also the increase in traffic, the cars idling on the drive-through,
And
Which-
you believe those will have an adverse effect on the environment,
air pollution.
right?
Yeah, because cars sitting there for a longer time. I believe the transaction will be longer than bank transactions.
Okay, well, we're gonna find that out when we get our own, our
peer
own traffic
review.
study, advice from our traffic engineer.
And so for these reasons, I would like to request the intervenor status to the commission.
All right,
And are these photos you're submitting up from your property?
Yeah, that's my property, yes. I live right next to the bank.
Yep.
okay. Any questions for Mrs. Cantillo? Miss? Okay, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. All right. Do you think that we could handle these collectively? Or do we need to look at each one separately?
Go ahead, you go first.
Well, I think that each person represented themselves and their concerns, so I think it would be more respectful to do it individually,
Okay.
just personally.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, all I'm saying is the applications are very similar.
But they were submitted independently.
No, I understand, but they're similar, so if we're inclined to grant intervenor status, I mean, we could do that with respect to all of the applications. Or we could take them one at a time, doesn't matter to me.
I would prefer to take it one at a time for the reasons articulated by Kevin, and also the first, I think he's doctor, I apologize if you, I didn't know. But he
Dr.
submitted,
Parks.
yeah, Dr. Parks submitted some material at least for confirming his
Yeah.
thoughts.
All right, well, let's take that one then, for starters.
So, as one of the newer members on the board, the, having to deal with an intervenor request is something new to me. So,
Me too.
oh, okay.
In 30 years.
So, I'm having some, difficulty in that a lot, the points, and we're talking about Mr. Parks, sorry. We're starting with him. Are points that in our usual examination of a site plan application are all very standard mechanical elements of our review, with the only distinction being now we're talking about environmental impact. So as we're reviewing a site plan, and if there are changes and there's going to be construction activity requiring silt fencing and things of that nature to deal with non-point source runoff during the construction phase, we're going to get that plan. But we're not considering the water quality of the water we're intercepting. We're making sure it doesn't get off the site. So that is something that's going to be explored prior to the resolution of this application and the closing of the public hearing, except for the environmental aspect of where does the water go after it leaves the site. And what the problem I'm kind of having is that every commercial property or every property along the post road that's going to generate similar activity to this applicant, who is only, at this point, is a special use permit analysis, is now we're going to have to do
Yeah.
an environmental impact statement of
Well,
analyzing, alternatives. I mean, it could just, is this something we're going to do routinely?
We may. I mean, the bottom line with this is that based on the parameters set up by Vinnie, they certainly have the right to come in and ask for intervenor status. But I think they have to produce not just general statements as to what they believe, but evidence that the things that they claim are going to happen. I don't disagree with your analysis at all. I think that this is the stuff that we deal with in a usual application.
Right, so let's take, for example, the.
It does,
sorry.
it does set a precedent, though. I mean, in other words, if we, huh?
I think Vinnie was quoting the law.
No, I know, but we'll have interveners on every,
I find that kind of hard to believe because we've been here for over 30
Well,
years,
I
some
know.
of us, and this is the first time.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I don't think they're going to pop out. I think this is a very unique use, first of its type in our town, and it clearly has residents that live very close by concerned.
yeah.
Right, so with respect to Mr. Parks, whether the information on traffic generation came through in the public hearing or tonight through this pathway, it's going to find its way to our independent traffic review and all of our normal analysis that we're going to do about the impacts of this specific use at this specific location to that specific street is going to be done. But it's going to be done in the context of the special use criteria of not creating a nuisance, not creating an undue, hardship, on on a city street and things like that. I'm not personally qualified to determine whether it's this cannabis retailer, or a drive-through restaurant or a bank, whether there's some, a net pollution impact,
Hold
gonna
on.
happen.
I think it's up to the intervener to show us that there would be, by more than just their words, that they had to get some kind
Right.
of report or some kind of an expert or something that would cause some evidence to say that there was some kind of environmental impact.
I think you're correct on that.
I think that's the only way you can do it. We're not equipped to evaluate that stuff.
If you could make these general assertions, not bring in any specific evidence, then there could be an intervener on every single application we hear.
Right, so.
And we'd be considering issues that we would consider anyway.
But, so specifically, let's stick with the traffic because that's.
Hold on a
There's
second.
a piece of evidence, no? Oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
Did you want to say something?
Oh,
She was just signaling vociferously, so.
Oh. One can do that?
Well, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Attorney Marjorie Shansky for the applicant. I hope this question is helpful to you. I have a lot of experience with interventions. My understanding or my expectation would be that your deliberation at this point is simply whether or not to accept the petition, because it's not a unilateral conversation. The applicant gets to respond to the petition, and with that body of information, positions the commission to answer perhaps some of the questions that are looming for you. And yes, the interveners had a burden and have a burden of production of evidence to support their claims. It's not simply what their concerns are. Under the Riverbend case, concerns, speculation, not evidence. But that aside, it would seem to me that equity dictates that the commission make a determination as to whether you accept the petitions or not, and we move to another day for the applicant to respond. Thank you.
And again, just as your counsel,
Yeah.
I would, you're dealing with members of the public. You're not dealing with members of the public represented by counsel. Speak over here so I can not yelled at by our friendly reporter. We're dealing with members of the public, not members of the public represented by counsel. We want to err on the side of their rights. Okay, so I would recommend acceptance of their petition for intervenor status so that their rights are protected. It's always better to err on individual rights so that their rights are protected, so that at the end of the day, everyone's rights are protected. Everyone can go to court at the end of the day and fight it out and let someone smarter than we decide if that be the case. But that's what this process is about. Letting everyone's rights be protected, letting everyone have their right to be heard. And yes, speculation, mere statements are insufficient. But the applicant has a right to respond, and they should have their right to respond to what was stated. And once you heard that, so instead of struggling tonight to bend over backwards and get the river bends, let's, I think, accept the petitions, grant the intervenor status, and go home. Adjourn to the next night, and hopefully we'll have our traffic report, because let's see what that traffic report says. And then, and when that traffic report comes in, the applicant will be able to see it, the interveners will be able to see it, and we'll all be able to
Yeah,
speak to it.
I think that's good advice. You know, I don't see the downside to
Right.
to accepting it.
We'll have some turkey in between now and then.
Yeah, I don't see the downside to accepting, and that's why I suggested that we deal with them all at once, because they're essentially. But, you know, I don't see any problem. I'm not even exactly clear on, in this case anyway, how it makes a big difference.
Well, I think.
You know?
Because it's a two.
I think you're right.
It's a
We should
twofold.
err
It's
on the side of.
Yeah.
of
It's a
the
twofold
residents'
step,
rights.
right? Granting the intervener status is simply giving them party status.
Yep,
It doesn't mean you're making any decisions as to what effect that,
Right.
right? You're not doing anything other than saying, okay, we're going to make you a party.
right.
And they'll have the right to be heard at a future meeting.
That's all you're doing at this
All
point.
right.
Right. That's
So-
why I asked at the beginning, what additional rights do they get if it's granted?
That's all. That's all.
Okay.
But they had the same right just
Yeah.
walking up to the podium.
Well, it's a-
Anyway,
it's a
sorry,
little-
let's,
It's
sorry.
slightly different.
Okay.
Slightly different.
Um,
But, so we're going to accept the
Well, if there
petition.
were, for example, if we called a special meeting, they would be entitled to notice of the special
We have a
meeting.
legal
Right.
obligation to notice.
They're going to get notices now, and they're going to, right,
They'll get a copy of the peer review of the traffic study.
right. And that's all.
So we need to make sure that, again, assuming we approve it, the applications, make sure that they get those notices or whatever else they're entitled to. All right. Can we handle this by a motion?
Now we can.
Huh?
Oh, now we can.
All right, let's have a motion.
Based on our discussions, I move that we approve the intervener status for the three persons who had intervened formally, Dr. Jesse Parks, Mr. James Glazer, and I'm going to do the best I can with this. Hang on for 1 second. I don't want to screw it up. A lady, Cubas Cantillo?
Yep, that's correct.
I will second that motion.
All right, motion to accept the intervener status for the applicants has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's the final item of business for tonight. Again, we'll hopefully soon, and be able to reconvene on December 6th. Continue this public hearing.
Killing me. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
And seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Vincent.